Hey beer geeks, and welcome to a very natural episode of the Craft Beer channel. Well, it's only natural for the first couple of minutes because I'm headed to the wonderful Unity Brewing Co. But before we go there, I wanted to go and enjoy the beer that was being made while we filmed it in nature, which is where this kind of beer should be consumed. So I am in the closest you get to nature in central London, which is the urban oasis of Hampstead Heath. I found myself a quiet spot disturbed only by squirrels, one of whom's already knocked this off of the log, so that's been fun. That would have gone viral, wouldn't it? Wasn't rolling at the time. Anyway, so this is the May saison from Unity Brewing Co. down in Southampton, and I was there a couple of weeks ago chatting to Jimmy. He's had a really interesting journey since founding Unity back in 2016, which has involved starting out being almost purely Belgian focused, Belgian ales, and having to pivot away from that because it really wasn't working for him. Luckily, he's not only a fantastic brewer, whatever he makes, but also he had and found a real passion for New England style brewing as well, because of the fact that they're both, you know, these Belgian beers and these New England beers, incredibly reliant on the yeasts that they use. So there was a similarity there, and there was also, in terms of the process, in terms of the way that you think about recipes, loads and loads in common. So that you could still scratch the itch for Belgian experimentation, he invented a new brand called May Provisions, and that's what this comes from. So now there's nobody picking up his IPAs, his British IPAs or his Belgian IPAs expecting a juice fest, and he can really stretch his legs, which we'll learn about in the video. So I'm going to crack this beauty. I'm not going to tell you about it just yet, because I'm going to let Jimmy do that in the video first. So I'll see you at the end of this video in about 10 minutes time to try the beer. Cheers. So Jimmy, thanks for having me down in sunny Southampton.
It's a pleasure.
Tell me about the beer that we're brewing today, because it seems pretty seasonal.
Yeah.
I've seen some spruce tips.
Yes, all the spruce tips.
All the spruce tips. All the Southampton spruce.
I know. So this is a beer that we're brewing under our side project May Provisions, which focuses on continental and Belgian and traditional style beers. The beer that we're brewing today is our May saison, so essentially a signature saison, which kind of embodies why we're called May Provisions. It's about celebrating what is available in May. I mean, it's a great time for a lot of food produce and all the rest of it. And so we went out foraging to get something really nice and fresh, and we found that spruce tips were just singing at the moment. Those little lights of bright light green on otherwise dark tree that show that everything's starting to grow and is really optimistic, and summer is just around the corner. So it's just otherwise a classic rye saison with the addition of spruce tips in the whirlpool.
So a spruce tip is like the start of a new branch of literal like new growth.
Exactly that, yeah.
And it smelt like a wet forest with, I don't know, somebody had given me some lemonade or something while I was walking through it. It's really zesty, but also really piney and fresh.
Exactly, and so to me that just screams saison. Screams brew a saison with it. I'd like to brew an IPA with it, with spruce at some point as well. And we have brewed with spruce before, but for this, I wanted, because a lot of our focus on May Provisions is saison beers specifically, as well as some other stuff, but I just love brewing saison and drinking saison. Yeah. So for that signature beer, I really wanted it to be a saison, and for me that earthy undertones, as well as the greenness and the leafiness from spruce, addition to lemon and pine and all the rest of it, it's just going to make it really sing within the saison style.
May's quite an unusual time in brewing because it's either at the very end or just the absolute peak of brewing. So before refrigeration, we used to brew everything in preparation for summer when we couldn't brew because stuff would get infected. Yeah. So it's almost kind of serendipity that there's so much produce around right now, and spruce would have been in those, what they call the gruit, so the unhopped or less hopped ales, and it was a mix of spice and herbs, right?
Yeah, exactly. So more traditional and as we know it with brewing records. Well, not necessarily brewing records, but
anecdotal,
a lot more recorded anecdotal conversation about. We know about that, so we know about the juniper and the branches and all the rest of it, and we know that spruce was used in those sorts of beers as well. Yeah. As you say, through anecdotally. So it's well recorded, and different breweries have been making spruce beers. I think Williams Brothers have always done a spruce beer. I think Freyrock's a heather ale. There's another one that they do.
Yes,
but it's definitely spruce.
Absolutely, and all these sort of like there's the Celtic and then the Scandinavian nations that are really famous for using sort of those really green foresty stuff in there.
Definitely, and they really have an affinity to the farmhouse style, which is great.
Yeah. Well, we'll get to farmhouse and indeed saison, because obviously brewing in May, ready for summer, is another hugely traditional thing when it comes to saisons. But it would be great to really start 5 minutes in by talking about Unity, which is where you guys started.
Yeah, so we're 4.5 years old now, and last time you were with us was a couple of years ago now.
Yeah, in a much smaller brewery.
Yeah, in our old brewery. So we built a new brewery at towards the end of 2019. Just in time to not be able to take advantage of it.
Of having a lovely tap room, yeah.
So yeah, when we started, we brewed New England style IPA with beers like Night Shift, Whirlpool, and Tired Hands, Hop Hands being huge inspiration. Right. But the biggest part of what we were doing when we first started was Belgian and continental style beers, and we. The more we've gone on, the more the hoppy side of what we've done completely took over, and we decided we wanted to start a side project to focus on those Belgian influenced beers, so people had a really good understanding of what they were getting from us. So we had we've built a great reputation for our hoppy beers and our modern craft beers, and then when people got a saison or something from us, or a wit beer or a weird Belgian stout or something, they'd be like, oh, what is this? They really like it. Whereas,
so they'd see the Unity name and be like, hey, cool, I like Unity, and then weren't expecting a Belgian beer.
Exactly, yeah. So whereas we did also have like a core of hardcore fans of the Belgian style beers that we were doing. So we decided to split it off just so it was really easy for people to understand what they could pick up off the shelf and how much they were going to enjoy it, because at the end of the day, people enjoying what we're doing is our main focus. We make beer for other people to really enjoy, because that's what I get a lot out of, is people having a good time drinking my beer.
Yeah, almost an inverse of the cliche of like, we brew the beer we like to drink. You're like, no, I brew the beer that other people want to drink.
Yeah, exactly.
But hopefully you can still sort of express
Which is
yourself.
what modern beer's about, I don't think you can really... It's just so insular of being, I'm going to make the beer I want to drink. I mean, I do make beer I want to drink, but
it now comes in bottles with...
my focus is making sure other people enjoy it more. So
and even beer geeks like us, although we love this kind of stuff and we love playing around with the different ingredients and different yeasts. When we sit down and meet friends, it's probably going to be a pint of something hazy or a delicious lager or something that's not the focus of the conversation. It's the lubricant.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I spent a long time drinking a lot of saisons, and all of a sudden I realised that everything I was drinking on a weeknight or with friends and the rest of it was a hazy IPA, Conflux or Pale Ale, or Steady Rolling Man or something like that. That's what I was drinking more of, and so I was like, well, let's brew the beer that we all want to drink. Well, or brew more of it.
Yeah. You guys do it incredibly well. So let's start with that. You've got a collab with Track, an IPA.
Collab with Track. So we first brewed this last year. It was going to be a collab in person last year, and then lockdown hit. So this was one of our first brews after lockdown, and so we decided to brew it again because it was good last year, but I felt like there was more places we could go with it. We could make a big improvement on it. Sometimes with collaborations, you might do it as a special release and not brew it again, which I always think is a shame because there's always something more you can do to improve a beer. So yeah, it's just Cashmere, Eldorado, and Amarillo. So you've got Amarillo for the base of that lovely orangey character, which just gives it a good framework for the hops to work on, and then we've got Eldorado and Cashmere for all the tropical fruit, and Cashmere is great for that Sabro but not Sabro thing, where it's got that light hint of coconut but nowhere near as much as Sabro, and loads of really overripe tropical fruits too. Cashmere is one of my favourite hops and really underrated. So.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's not one that you often hear about being used in New England, and maybe it's because we come to New England expecting a certain thing.
Citra mosaic.
Well, yeah, exactly. So it's we go both expecting those flavours, but also we come to them almost expecting those names as brand names. You know, I try not to, but I am probably more likely to pick up a Citra or mosaic beer than I am say one that says Cashmere. Yeah. It's sort of those hops are now shortcuts to knowing what you're going to get.
Yeah, which is fine. It's like people know they like a Sauvignon Blanc, right? Yeah. Or a Merlot. And there's similar things now with beer to that extent.
Yeah, I mean, it used to be, we used to moan about people not talking about hops in that way, about, talking about the differences between them all. And now we've got to almost the wine levels of going, my favourite is mosaic. Yeah. And it's now being seen as sort of basic, but actually, that's what beer should be about. Even though you're going to experiment and try lots of different things, it's also finding what you love and that level of understanding is great.
It's all about enjoying it. Yeah. And if you know that that's the thing you're going to really enjoy, then you go for it. That's the most important thing for me, is that people are really enjoying themselves drinking good beer from small independent breweries.
So you started with this style of beer, and I think you're one of the best at it. Certainly from a pint kind of context, like less so the festival thirds, and more so like something you want to drink time and time again, straight from the can or by pint. But was it a bit frustrating to start as somebody who loved that more traditional side and not see that pickup? Did you think you were going to persuade people and it proved a bit trickier?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, it's nice that one side of what I love to brew and all the rest of it is successful and it, like took off and is a really popular thing. Because back when I started brewing it wasn't that much of a big thing, and it just ballooned. So that's really gratifying. But I do feel like it's a shame that the UK hasn't picked up Belgian influenced beers a lot more. But again, I think I was a little bit naive to think that a British brewed Belgian influenced beer would do well when we can get beer from Belgium, from 100-year-old Belgian brewery or younger, but the real deal for cheaper than I can produce it for, and pretty readily available from everywhere. You would get your mainstream Belgian beers in what were cool bars at the time. Not like, we're not talking about craft beer bars here. We're talking about high street places. Really.
Yeah, I mean, Hoegaarden had a moment, didn't it?
Big time.
Yeah, I think just before cider, bad cider kicked off. Yeah. It was Hoegaarden with a slice of orange.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Which I used to really enjoy in my late teens and early 20s, going on holiday with my dad and stuff. It was like, to Belgium and Holland and places like that. So I figured it wasn't a stupid idea, and people were starting, Brett beers and things were becoming more and more popular, with, people starting their wild projects like Beavertown starting Tempest and, Burning Sky building their brewery around doing wild beers, and stuff like Michela's Brett beers and things becoming really, really popular. And there was definitely a moment in time when that was looking like a proper thing. Yeah. And it just didn't really take hold. And again, we're talking about, if I brew a double, that's great, but it costs £1 more a bottle than a Westmalle double. What are you going to drink? Yeah. I mean, I would probably be drinking Westmalle double.
I could have a unit. Yeah. Yeah. But it's interesting that you say that, because I think one of the reasons that it had that moment and it never happened is actually New England IPA. And you found that it sold much better, but that is also because New England IPA is best enjoyed close to the source. Yeah. So I think a lot of people go, I could get my Belgian stuff from Belgium, and my fresh IPAs from. Yeah.
Yeah, and Belgian stuff, if it's a year old, cool.
All the better.
Or longer,
And even though these beers are obviously hugely about the hops, and we just had a great West Coast IPA that's all about the hops as well, there is a thread that runs through the brewery, which seems to be a focus on yeast, whether it's Belgian or American or English.
Absolutely, and that's why I got into New England style IPAs in the first place, because I was homebrewing. I've been in the industry for a long time, and until I started my own brewery, whilst I was working at other breweries, I was still home brewing. My thought was always like, you spend all day brewing and then you come home and brew.
Yeah, like people working in a bar, I'm going home and pouring pints for other people.
Exactly. So it seems stupid, but I wanted to make beer for myself, which is partly why I started my own brewery, because I had my own ideas of things and I wanted my own creative output from loving brewing Belgian influenced beers at home, and that focus on yeast and yeast esters being well integrated into the beer and all the rest of it, New England IPA just made sense to me because, you know, all the fruity esters and stuff lifting the hops, and also the way that glycerol plays with it. So, for example, with a saison yeast produce loads of glycerol, so you have a saison, it'll be like literally bone dry, like no sugar, but it will still have body, and glycerol is what gives it that body. And proper yeast that you use, like London L3, London Fog, like yeast like that, produce loads of glycerol, which is what helps lift that juiciness of a New England IPA, as well as like loads of tropical fruit and peach and vanilla kind of esters that you get from it too. So that affinity with yeast and using it as an ingredient, rather it's like West Coast IPA, everyone was like, right, okay, we just wanted to get out of the way of the hops. We want the hops and the malt to shine and that's it. Whereas actually using that fourth ingredient properly, and also looking at water treatment properly. So instead of just focusing purely on malt and hops, focusing on water and yeast in tandem and making each of those four elements really work for you, it's just really exciting, you know, and can make a beer more interesting. Yeah.
Should we have a little go on the Sauvignon Blanc saison?
So so when I first started Unity, this is something I really wanted to do from day one.
Specifically a Sauvignon Blanc
saison, barrel-aged saison. So
do you have a background in wine?
I do actually, yeah. So before I started working in breweries, I was running wine shops. I was studying for my diploma in wine when I left that, which is like one qualification down from Master of Wine. So it was like, I had knowledge, of which most of it's gone now. But I don't drink very much wine because I can't afford the wine I really want to drink. Whereas I can totally afford the beer I really want to drink because you can buy one bottle of it or one can of it and it doesn't absolutely break the bank. You could be drinking one of the best beers in the world, which is one of the beautiful things about beer, really. Yeah,
it's true of beer and cider. It's, you know, we see this as kind of craft beer as bourgeois and ridiculous, but actually it's nothing compared to wine, and it's a brilliant way into very, you know, slow matured artisan drink.
Exactly, yeah. Sauvignon Blanc, right? It's the classic good drinking, you know, fruity, dry, crisp, you know, it's a crowd pleaser, but it's got all those gooseberry and lemon and like almost spicy notes, and certainly like French Sauvignon Blanc. So the barrels this was aged in from Bordeaux, which Bordeaux Sauvignon Blanc is very minerally and very lemony, top notes and the rest of it, which when you think about what beer might work with that, saison, right?
Saison,
you know, it's just the first thing you think of. So I've always thought it'd be a wicked idea to do a Brett saison in a Sauvignon Blanc barrel. So there's no, unlike a lot of barrel-aged saisons you get these days, which have a total mixed culture with lactobacillus and pedococcus and other like lactic acid producing bacteria. This is just Brett, and I really love Brett beers rather than like sour mixed firm beers. So this isn't sour at all, but you have so much barrel character.
It's got, like the first thing you get is a load of Brett. It's like walking into Cantillon, but on top of that there's a real vanilla oak thing as well. And like almost a touch of like toasted coconut there too. But then the minerality of the wine that was already in the barrel and those lemony top notes. So we're looking for bright, dry, zesty, like lots of lovely spicy and fruity yeast character, you know, and just really refreshing as well, you know, something. When I was really happy when we let that bottle condition for a few months, and I was like, I'm going to start tasting bottles now to see how it's developed. And it was one of the first sunny days, and like spring days where it was actually starting to feel a bit warmer, and I was like, that's just perfect, you know, and it works really well. And I'm really happy to put it out under the May Provisions side project as well, because it just makes more sense
to have that, you know.
Craft beer was all about getting diversity into there. It was about being sick of certain styles, and I love New England IPAs and I love just IPA generally, but when I walk into a brew space, not even just a pub, a brewery that has a huge variation of styles on, that gets me very excited. And I'm really glad that you found a way to make Unity work along with the May provisions and find a way of making that separation.
Cool.
And make it work for people. And the beer board is just full of amazing stuff: West Coasts, Kolsch's, you know, wild saisons, big old IPAs, double IPAs, sour IPAs. It's amazing to see that coming back into craft beer, and long may that continue. Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
It's been a pleasure, Johnny.
Cheers. So there we go. I hope you enjoyed that, and I hope you enjoyed my classic Belgian port, which is half foam, half beer, and also a little bit of twig, which got in there. So as Jimmy's described, this has spruce tips in. Now spruce is, you know, the very tip of a spruce branch, but you know, it's new growth in spring that you pluck. And we talked about it with Pahala as well. Like, it seems like it's having a little moment, which is down to the seasonality of it, which is around this time of year. And it's a delicious ingredient. You bite one and it tastes of lemon and sap and resin, which is kind of a little bit like a lot of American hops in particular. And on those here you get lovely banana esters, banana, clove, not quite Weissbier, it's a little bit more savoury than like the German side, but it's beautifully spiced on top of that banana. And then, yeah, some earthiness, some kind of, it'd be harsh to say dusty, but it's hedgerow-like. It's sweet and it's savoury, coming from the Golden hop. And definitely some resin. Maybe some lemon, but I wonder whether I'm just hoping that that's there because of the spruce. Way drier than you think it's going to be from the aroma. Yeah, and there's that oily, sappy, really kind of green thing that just finishes off the beer, cuts through that banana and the spiciness of the rye and the British hops, just to leave a lemony freshness on your tongue. And I'm so glad now that May Provisions has allowed Jimmy to sort of tweak and really focus on New England beers, but also give him the space to make these really unusual ales. And while I was there, you know, we tried the most amazing, it was like a quick sour, I think, with some mixed culture in there now, on top of Riesling grapes, the only Riesling grapes grown in the UK. That beer was just stunning. I said he should release it then, but Jimmy's going to wait a little bit longer. The English IPA was so good. And I'm really glad also, one of my favourite beers ever was Conflux, his Belgian pale, and I'm so glad that's come back as extra as part of May Provisions. So, you know, it's a real shame that we can't get Belgian breweries in the UK to really triumph, to really make a lot of noise. And that's just the proximity to Belgium, I think, and obviously the keen pricing of the Belgian monks. But it's great to see a little bit of innovation, a little bit of out-of-the-box thinking has allowed Jimmy to now keep making that stuff, keep bringing it to the UK and doing it exceptionally well. So if you're ever down Southampton, do go see him. The tap room's lovely as well, and the beers only get better and better. Excitingly, if you're watching this live or relatively live, we have a live show coming up with Jimmy where we'll be tasting some of his May Provisions beers and some of his Unity beers. That's towards the end of July 2021. Once we've done that, I'll put a link to that at the end of this video as well, so you can watch it even if you can't get hold of the beers, but the taste along box will be on sale soon, so maybe catch you then. Cheers.